This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you to the glory of God and to the benefit of all those who listen. Well, praise God and welcome. Session number 3 of TV for the 21st century. When it comes to navigating the Apple TV, there are some things that we want to keep in mind and understand. So, as you may or may not realize, and probably I'd say you do, Apple provides what they sometimes refer to as APIs or sometimes frameworks. And I'm not a programmer, so my level of knowledge on the difference, or if the terms are, interchangeable or what have you, I'm not so sure. But what I do know effectively is that these allow developers to tap into features that Apple makes available. So, for example, there are frameworks or APIs to allow for things like using AirPlay in your app or using AirPrint, or frameworks for all sorts of different things, right? I mean, notifications, just a whole slew of features that we have come to expect. iCloud support, all of these kinds of things. And when a developer calls these, then those features become available in their app. But also, they work in a way that is very familiar to us. So we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel. We don't have to relearn everything. If you open up, for example, the Files app on your iPhone or iPad, you'll navigate, to your recent items or shared items, or you can browse to all the locations and all the folders and subfolders and so on. But if you open an app like Pages, Keynote, or Numbers, you'll notice that it almost seems as though you are accessing the Files app from within inside of those other apps, Pages, Keynote, or Numbers, because essentially you really are. Those apps have access to the Files app interface so that they can display the same options that you would have if you were in the Files app, and it just makes things a lot easier and consistent. It's why the predictable patterns method of teaching works so well. And we praise God for giving us that vision of how to do that, because once you learn those fundamentals, then you can really operate in any app. And I bring all this up for a very specific reason. There is a playback control, a media playback, I assume API or framework. Again, don't be too hard on me with that, because I'm not an actual programmer. But that media playback API allows for standard media controls in any app that plays music or movies or shows or otherwise. And this is true on tvOS as well. So if you use the Apple TV app, obviously it's going to use that standard framework, and that applies to anything that you watch in the TV app, whether it's content that you own, that you rent, that you watch from an Apple TV channel. Because remember, Apple TV channels do not require third-party apps. They work right inside the TV app. So if you use Paramount Plus through the Apple TV app as a channel, or if you use Tastemade or PBS Living, Hallmark, certainly Apple TV Plus, obviously, and Stars and a variety of others, the way that you navigate while the content is playing is going to be the same across the board, because it's all one app. It's the TV app. Now, there are a couple of other well-known apps that also use that standard media playback interface. And so the way you navigate in those third-party apps is identical to how you navigate in the TV app. There are also, though, some notable apps that have chosen to sort of use their own design for the playback controls. And so they're not really using the same APIs, not at least at a high level, right? That the foundation may be the same, but they're putting their own spin on things. And what that's going to result in is there is a chance that some of what I am about to talk about is not going to be the same in all apps. Some of the menus are going to look different. Some of the ways that you move around those menus may vary. So please keep that in mind. I'm not going to attempt to address every one of the ways that you do things here, but I'm going to try to cover some of the most common concepts. Starting with rewind and fast forward. Now, that's pretty easy. And I want to remind you that one of the easiest ways we can do that is with Siri, right? We can use SIRI by holding down that side button while content is playing back, and we can say, rewind 10 seconds, rewind 5 minutes, fast forward 30 minutes, start from the beginning. All sorts of things like that we can say. And when we rewind, it will automatically, this is a new feature in tvOS 18 and the counterparts, iOS, iPadOS. When you rewind, it will automatically display the subtitles or the closed caption for a period of time. And that's going to depend on how many times you rapidly press the left side of the click pad on the remote. Um, I think I had looked this up before, but I think when you rewind, when you press the click pad left side one time to rewind, I think it takes you back 10 seconds. And I think pressing the right side one time to fast forward takes you forward or skips ahead by 30 seconds, if I remember correctly. And you can repeatedly press either the left or the right side as many times as you need to. And if you press it really rapidly, to like 2 quick times together, then that will not only rewind you 20 seconds, but it will also turn the subtitles and closed captions on for 20 seconds as well. Now, if you press it once and then you wait about 5 seconds and press it again, that's only going to do a 10-second CC, because that's technically considered only one press, but it's these rapid presses that are going to increase the length of the subtitles and closed captions being displayed. And this is designed to help you, maybe if you missed something, and they will automatically appear when you have done this. And there is a voiceover setting. It's a verbosity setting that allows voiceover to actually speak what the captions are saying as well. And you can output that as speech or Braille, or both speech and Braille. So if you have a Braille display, you can even pair that via Bluetooth with your Apple TV and have the captions output in Braille. But I have mine, for example, set to speech. And this can be really helpful if you are watching something where somebody suddenly starts speaking, let's say in Italian or Spanish or German or something in the movie, and then VoiceOver will read the English translation of that for you. Now, it can also, for some people, perhaps be, I wouldn't use this phrase, but some people might actually, say that it's a bit of an annoyance because they aren't hearing a foreign language. It's really just English. They just wanted to rewind, and suddenly voiceover is reading for 10 seconds on top of the dialogue in the show. And if this happens to you and you find it just unbearable, you certainly can do two different things. There are two options. One is you can just temporarily turn voiceover off. And that is easy to do if you have your accessibility shortcuts set up. Triple click that top left button and you're good to go, or use SIRI. But that's, one option that you have. The other option you have is you can disable that in the verbosity settings of voiceover, so that I think it says like media descriptions, and you can turn them off. So you don't have to have speech Braille or speech and Braille. You can just have it to do nothing. And so if that's something that you do frequently and it frequently bothers you, you certainly can disable that. I have mine on speech only. I don't use Braille, but I do, I do like it for the foreign language situations, though those are not that common. We don't have to, rewind all that often either, so it really doesn't bother me. If there's a time when we are, yeah, I'll just, maybe turn voiceover off, and then I don't have to mess with it. Now, if you use SIRI and you say something like rewind 10 minutes or even rewind 1 minute, it will not put the subtitles and captions on for that. So that's another way you can avoid that. If you're doing a longer rewind like that, it's not going to, have you watching the captions for 10 minutes or something. So you can also use SIRI and tell it bigger intervals. But again, to rewind with the remote, you can press the left side, just click once on the left during normal playback, and it's going to typically rewind 10 seconds. Press it repeatedly to go, further increments, and press the right side to fast forward 30 seconds. You can, of course, click the center button to pause and resume playback, or you can use the play pause button that is the second row on the left of your actual buttons. Now, there are other ways depending on the app. So some apps and some, depending on how VoiceOver, what mode you're using. Remember, we talked about the modes. Depending on the mode and what app you're in, you may be able to press and hold the left or right side of the remote to continue rewinding and fast forwarding. Or you also, in some cases, can press the pause button. And then while playback is paused, you can slide or drag your finger along the click pad to the left or right to move more quickly. There's even you can sort of rotate your finger in a circle in some apps to rewind or fast forward. And typically, VoiceOver is going to read the time stamps where you are. And so you'll be aware of what's happening and how much you're rewinding and fast forwarding. Typically, my favorite way to rewind or fast forward is one of two things: either to use SIRI or just repeatedly press the left or right button, the left or right side of the click pad, because that way I know I'm not going to, even if I overshoot, it's only going to be by a few seconds. So I know, for example, if I'm watching a program on my DVR and I want to fast forward through the commercials, I kind of have knowledge of how many times I have to press that right side, depending on the app and the show and the channel and so forth. I sort of know, after one ad break, I can figure out, okay, yeah, if I press this 9 times, that's right where I need to be, or something like that, So that's the way that I prefer to do it. You might remember me saying this the other day, you can also use SIRI and say, what did they just say? And that will automatically rewind you, I think, like 10 or 15 seconds, and it will put on the captions again for that period of time as well, so you can get what they just said. The other playback control that you have during normal playback is either the swipe down or the swipe up. Now, again, exactly what these do is going to depend on the app that you're using. So there's some differences depending on the app. In the TV app, if you swipe down, what's going to happen, and actually, if you just touch the click pad, it will bring up the controls, by the way, without clicking or swiping. Just touch. That's going to bring up the controls, and it's going to show you the amount of time remaining. Some people want to know, well, how long is left in this program? Just tap the click pad, and it will show you. Now, the other side of the coin is I have people come to me and they say, why is VoiceOver talking constantly while I'm watching a show? Well, it really doesn't talk constantly, but if you bump the click pad, it's going to talk, because again, you're displaying the elapsed and remaining time. And so, of course, VoiceOver is going to read that, which is helpful to you. So if you want to know how long is left in the program and so on, you can put your finger on the click pad and it will bring that up. So to avoid that, just don't touch the remote unless you need to. And then at that point, if you're not touching the remote, the only time you should hear VoiceOver speak is at the beginning of a program, at the very end, and sometimes with some apps during the switch from a show to an ad break, or from an ad break back to a show. Some of the apps will say, okay, add, and it'll say add 1 of 5, add 2 of 5, something like that. And then when the program comes back, it will read again how long the program has left, how long has elapsed, that sort of thing. But this process of it reading is typically no more than 5 or 6 seconds, maybe 10 seconds worth, and that's it. And I use, of course, the Apple TV app. I use Peacock, Paramount Plus. I now use Paramount Plus in the Apple TV app. I have also used the actual Paramount Plus app What else do I use? Let's see. Max. I use Max, Disney Plus, Hulu, although now I do Hulu inside the Disney Plus app, YouTube, even Amazon Prime a little bit because my son has it. And and Xfinity Stream, the actual Comcast app. Yeah. And I don't think I've had any of those where voiceover keeps talking relentlessly. It always stops after announcing that initial stuff, or at the end of a program, it may announce, what's coming up next, and those sorts of things. The Max app has a sort of a screen that appears and says up next in, and it starts counting down the number of seconds. So for like the last 12 seconds of a program on Max, it's going to be talking, because it's going to be like up next, and it'll say the program, and then it'll be like 12, 11, 10, 9, down to 0. It doesn't bother me. If you really think you're missing something, again, you could just turn voiceover off momentarily. Really not a big deal. But some people do prefer to turn off voiceover during the shows and movies that they watch, and that's fine too. I think Trainer Cliff mentioned that he does that in some apps. And that's, again, very easy to do if you have your accessibility shortcuts set up. The other thing that may cause voiceover to talk during playback is if you have devices that are getting notifications on your Apple TV, like a doorbell, a camera, a garage door, something like that. If it's opened or closed, or it detects motion or something, then that will speak that notification. Or an upcoming game, if you have the game features enabled where your favorite sports teams are, going to notify you. So up next is this game between the Eagles and the whatever, and it's going to, let you it'll say press the button to watch. Well, that's the TV button. That's the one they want you to press if you want to switch from current programming to the in-progress game. All right, back to what we were talking about with swiping up or down on the remote during normal playback. In the TV app, if you swipe down, it's going to give you options to view the continue watching row while you're still watching an actual program. So it's like picture in picture. It's going to give you the option to play from beginning, and it actually says play from beginning. There's a little pause in the way voiceover reads that, but that is what it is, play from beginning. So that lets you restart the current program that's already in progress. And then there's a details button, which is the third one down. You can click the center button on details to bring up the show page, which has, all the episodes and how to watch, and the cast and crew and related content. Or if it's a movie, it's still going to have much of that same information as well. Now, if instead of swiping down during normal playback, you swipe up, you have some other options. Then you have the audio section, the closed captioning and subtitle section. So here you can actually turn on, for example, audio description right on the fly. And usually what you're looking for there is a track that says something like US English audio described, or it may say English AD or something like that. But you can quickly switch to a different audio track to get those descriptions. You can quickly turn on the subtitles. You can also typically choose the playback destination. I mentioned to you that we have home pods, and sometimes when I go out to the kitchen to make a snack or something, I'll put the I don't typically have to now with the setup that we have, but I can, if I want to, I can put the sound on the kitchen home pods as well as in the living room. So you can bring up that playback destination from those audio controls as well. And again, this is all accessed by swiping up while you're watching a program, and then you need to navigate up, down, left, and right. And it's kind of like the control center. I recommend just playing with this. I would have to go and look at it to tell you what steps, but then really memorizing those steps doesn't necessarily make sense, because your options may be a bit different. If you have different playback sources, or even just what you're watching may cause there to be a bit of a difference. So I would encourage, instead of me telling you, okay, swipe left 3 times and up 4 times, whatever, I would just try it. Just while you're playing something, swipe up, and then you can move up, down, left, or right and click on whatever you want. Do be aware that it sometimes, just like the control center, will move to the next category when you've run out of places to go in one category. So before you know it, you might end up in in, let's say, the playback destination category instead of the audio track category or something. And one thing I would encourage you while you're playing with this, while you're getting used to it, is to pause the show rather than to try to do it while the dialogue is going right over top of it. So you can simply press the play pause button first and then swipe up, and that's going to give you the freedom of not having to hear the dialogue and the voiceover speech, or to miss the dialogue. That way you'll be able to play with those controls, figure out what you want. Another option under audio is reduce loud sounds. So you can make it so that the basically a movie that, for example, has a lot of noise, shooting or airplanes or things of that nature, and those tend to be much, much louder sometimes than the dialogue. Reduced loud sounds will sort of balance that out. Now, there's also a setting. If you go under settings and then video and audio, there is a setting for enhanced dialogue, which kind of does the opposite. It attempts to pull the dialogue out more to make it clearer to understand without affecting the background. But there's different modes for that. So there's one that's more aggressive than another, and then you will lose some of the background sounds. But again, you can play with this enhanced dialogue option for yourself. It's going to have a different effect depending on what device you're using, right? So if you're using a sound bar or a home entertainment, theater system, or just built-in TV speakers, the results are going to vary. It works fantastically on the HomePods. It really makes the dialogue very, very clear on the HomePods without affecting the other sounds of whatever you're watching. Also, under your settings and under accessibility is the option to turn audio description on, so that you don't have to turn it on as you're watching a program. If you are someone who uses audio description all the time with everything you watch, then I would recommend turning it on under settings and accessibility. Now, for me, I don't use it much. Most of what I watch is not stuff that requires it, because there's a lot of dialogue. And if there is, a lot of times, one of the kids or my wife will just tell me what happened. But, certainly I have used it on occasion. So I like to just do it on the fly instead of actually changing the setting. But again, that's personal preference. Now, even if you enable it under settings, there may be third-party apps that don't acknowledge that setting, and you have to do it yourself manually from within the app. So when you start getting into using third-party apps, Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, you need to check the settings for those apps to enable audio description. And remember, the content that supports audio description is going to vary as well. So you will want to spend time exploring that if it is important to you. The Hulu app used to, and I would assume probably still does. I access my Hulu content through the Disney Plus app, and I haven't paid much attention to whether this feature is in there or not. But if you use the Hulu app itself, it used to have a section under the hubs category where it had a specific audio description hub. So you could find a whole bunch of content that had the, described the audio descriptions. So again, this is something to play with if it interests you. We've shared with you two different ways of doing that: on the fly and from your settings. And then make sure that when you're using third-party apps, you check their settings as well. Now, again, just to remind you that when you swipe up during normal playback or when you swipe down, the options you get are going to vary. They're not going to be the same in every app. And that's another reason that I'm not going over that step by step, because it is different, right, in every app. Here's an example. Now, I haven't used the DirecTV app in several years, or at least a couple years, because we are Xfinity customers. I've had no need for it. And even if I were going to get a live TV streaming app now, it would probably be Hulu, not DirecTV. But the last time I used the DirecTV, their swipe up, I think it was swipe up, or maybe it was swipe down, actually brought up a some additional options like to record the current program. That was under there, so you could record right from that little pop out menu. And there would be a restart option to restart the current program. And then I sort of get the impression that the Xfinity Stream app, if you swipe up, actually brings up like a mini guide so you can see your TV guide while you're watching your movie or show. That doesn't really, I can't really tell if that works with voiceover. I tend to not use it. I just go back to the full guide when I'm done watching something. I just press the back button and I can, get back to the guide in Xfinity Stream and use it that way. But I get the feeling just from some things voiceover does say that when you swipe up, it may bring up a mini guide. But I know that when you swipe down, it brings up the info on the program you're watching and, audio stuff and things like that. So, try these things out, play with them a little bit. And remember that you're going to see anything from info to audio to start picture in picture, to restart the current program. There's going to be a lot of choices, and I would encourage you to just play with them in whatever it is that you like to watch. Find some time when it doesn't matter so much. You're not, trying to actually watch a movie with the family or anything. You're just trying to learn, and then press pause. And while it's paused, swipe up, down, try these different options and see what's available. And remember that there may be entirely separate menu systems if you swipe down versus if you swipe up. So keep all of that in mind, and don't be afraid to use SIRI because that works with many apps. And it even third-party apps, it works quite well. Again, I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's any apps that I use now that SIRI doesn't work with, as far as like media apps. I don't know. It even works in Xfinity Stream. Now with Xfinity Stream, when you're watching live TV, you can't really rewind live TV in the Xfinity Stream app. You have to use one of their cable boxes to do that, and that's because they store in order for you to be able to rewind live TV, the app has to basically create temporary recordings in the cloud. And certain apps do that, but the Xfinity Stream one doesn't. They create the temporary record. They do that on the cable box. And so if you're using an X1 box, you can absolutely pause and rewind live TV. In the Xfinity Stream app, not so much, but you can rewind and pause on-demand stuff and DVR recordings, anything you've recorded, anything you've purchased, and through Xfinity. And so it does, SIRI even works in that app. Even with DVR recordings, if I remember right, it will, you could say like rewind 30 seconds and it will do that. So this is a bit about the playback controls. We've kind of covered a good portion of the TV app. And you might remember I said to you, don't worry about the movies and TV shows app if those two apps still show up, because all of that's been moved now into the TV app. As I think about the options for watching TV, one of the things that comes to mind is not only is the playback control setup going to vary from app to app, but also the interface of the app itself may vary. Now, we demonstrated a sidebar app. The TV app is a sidebar app. And again, that means that along the left-hand side is a vertical bar that has all of the categories. And if you remember in the TV app, that was like search, home, Apple TV Plus, MLS, library, all of your channels, that sort of thing were listed there, or many of them. And they were in a sidebar that disappears when you're doing other things. And then remember, it said press back or navigate back to show sidebar. So you just would press the back button or swipe to the left or click left, and you're going to get this sidebar. You go up and down the sidebar, and when you find a category you want, you click it. There is another kind of sidebar in certain apps. Xfinity Stream is one of them, where, yes, it's a sidebar, but you don't have to click the category to select it. As soon as you swipe up or down to the category, it is automatically selected, and then you just go to the right to navigate within that category. So there's one less step there. You don't have to click And that's, not saying that one's better than the other, but just letting you know that there are certain sidebars that you don't have to click. But there is another kind of app that you may run across, and that is the tabbed app. Now, the tab app will have, much like your iPhone, each category is a separate tab. Um, Typically, the major difference here is that the tabs are across the top of the screen rather than across the bottom, like on your iPhone. The iPad has some top tab apps, actually, and so it's kind of similar to those. Um, and so you'll go up as far as you can to the top, and you'll get into this tab bar. You can move between the tabs, left and right. Whichever one you want, you click on it, and then it usually selects it and typically automatically brings you down to the first option within that tab, or if not, you can just click or swipe down. Now, I will also say that you really want to remember that sometimes the sidebar will not show up until you press the back button. VoiceOver said in the TV app, press back or navigate back to show sidebar. But there are some sidebar apps where the sidebar literally will not show up until you press the back button. You will try to move all around and you'll think, well, there's no sidebar and there's no tabs either. Well, then just press the back button again and it will take you typically to the sidebar. There's a few apps you'll run into that are like that you have to press the back button to show the sidebar. So what is the best course of action for navigating an app? It's to explore. It's to not be afraid to try things. It's to remember your predictable patterns and your fundamentals. Just like everything else that we teach, there are predictable patterns. And we've just talked about some. We've talked about a couple of different kinds of sidebars, but all sort of within the category of sidebars. And we talked about the tab app that has the tabs across the top. And these really are going to be the most common types of apps that you're going to run into, especially when it comes to watching TV. They'll typically be laid out in one or the other. And many of them will have very similar options, even if they are laid out differently or even if they are called by a different name. There's typically going to be a search tab. There's typically going to be a home tab. Sometimes they'll have subcategories that you just have to keep swiping, movies, TV shows, sports, things of that nature. Some of them will put like the search area in the same tab as something else. I think with Xfinity, it's called Discover, if I remember correctly. And that has both a search in it. And if you swipe down below the search area, some other things that you can look for there as well and browse. So, for me to try to do a detailed overview of even one of these apps just doesn't make sense, in my opinion, because, the most useful way for you to get used to this and learn it is to try it for yourself, to navigate within these apps that you use, and get used to them. And one thing that does simplify this is using the TV app as much as you possibly can. So I almost never have to navigate, for example, in the Peacock app. Now, I sort of know how, or, if I don't, I'll figure it out because, praise God, he shows me. I told you before, he's given me a talent for that, just a skill where it just makes sense to me. But you can also hone that through training and practice, right? And you can remember. And so if I need to figure out an app, I will. And sometimes I have navigated a particular app for one reason or another. But 9 times out of 10, I'm going to start with the TV app. And because I'm starting with the TV app, that's really all I have to navigate. So if I want to watch an episode of The Nanny, which happens to be in Peacock, I will go to The Nanny in the TV app. I'll find its show page there through SIRI or through search, or it's already in my continue watching row now in my watch list because I watch it. And so I just click on it to start playing right where I left off. Or if I want to see the different episodes and so on, I don't even have to do that through the separate app, in this case, Peacock, because remember, if you long press on an item in the up next, or excuse me, it's not called up next anymore, it's called continue watching. If you long press on an item in the continue watching row, it brings up that menu. You just go down to view show or go to show, something like that. And then you've got all the episodes there. You can pick whichever episode you want, click on it, and it will immediately open up in the in the necessary app, and it will start playing. So I almost never have to navigate in those third-party apps. I find the show in the TV app, it opens in the correct app, and it starts to play. Praise God. Simple as that. And I can pause and rewind and stuff, but when I'm done, I just go back to the TV app. Now, again, almost is the operative word here, right? There are times that you might need to do something in the third-party app, especially first time. When you first start using an app, you might have to sign in, and the method for signing in is going to vary from app to app. Sometimes you can scan a QR code, sometimes go from a website to a website on your nearby iPhone or iPad. Sometimes it's going to allow you to use the app. Like, for example, the Paramount Plus app actually allows you to open up Paramount Plus on your iPhone, for example, and it'll say, do you want to sign your Apple TV? And yep, allow. And then it just does it that way, as long as they're both on the same Wi-Fi network. I think YouTube does that too, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a few like that. And then there are others where you actually need to type the words in on the on-screen keyboard. And I want to remind you about typing on the on-screen keyboard. I think we covered it briefly in session 1 or 2, but I want to cover it again today because there may be apps that you need to sign into. So some quick reminders about the on-screen keyboard. Reminder number 1, the on-screen keyboard is set up alphabetically, not in a QWERTY style. Let me say that again. The on-screen keyboard is typically set up alphabetically, not in a QWERTY style. Now, every once in a while, you could run into a weird app that does something different, but typically not. Typically, it's going to be set up alphabetically. That means everything is across one row, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way across. Now, again, every once in a while, you might run into an app that puts it in columns, so you have to go down. The top row only goes like from A to F, and then the next row goes from G to M or whatever, But in most cases, it's going to be all one row. If you don't find it all in one row, go to the next row. To the left of the A is the space bar, and all the way over to the right, you have the delete button, which you can press and hold the center button of the click pad to clear everything that's in the edit field. And I think you have, if I'm trying to remember now, the normal keyboard has, I think it has maybe the numbers to the just below the letters. I think if you go down a row, it has the numbers. And then you will also find that these on-screen keyboards have a row either below or above the letters and numbers that you can swipe to the right to choose between uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. So if you need to get the symbols, you go up to that row, go to the right to symbols, and then click the center button, swipe down, whatever works for you, and that's going to bring you into the symbols keyboard instead. And then you can go back up and go to the lowercase letters and so on. Now, if I need to quickly change between uppercase and lowercase, I do not have to go up to that tab row and find uppercase letters. Instead, all I have to do when the keyboard is on screen is press the play pause button to toggle between lowercase and uppercase, or uppercase and lowercase. So that is very convenient. If you need to insert a capital letter, you don't have to go to that tab row and find, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, and all that. You just have to press play pause and it will change the case of the letters. That is super convenient. Try to remember that one because that's definitely, you'll find that to be very useful. Now, another tip about the on-screen keyboard is that typically then if you keep swiping down below the keyboard, you're going to get to the done button or the continue button or the next button or whatever. It's usually at the very bottom below the on-screen keys. Here's yet another tip. It is possible to not have to use the on-screen keyboard at all, because through a feature called Continuity Keyboard, you can use your nearby iPhone or iPad and enter text on that device, and it will appear on the Apple TV. So the way to do this is when you click into an edit field and the keyboard appears, check your nearby device for a notification, because it will pop up and it'll say Apple TV keyboard, and just double tap on that on your iPhone or iPad. And if you're already using your iPhone or iPad, it'll appear near the top of the screen as a typical notification banner. And again, just double tap on it, and then bring focus to it. Double tap on it, and now you've got an edit field on your iPhone or iPad, and you can type on those devices on the screen, and it will appear on your Apple TV. Or if you have a smart keyboard or Bluetooth keyboard attached to one of those devices, you can even type on that, or a braille display, however you normally like to type. Now, I will say that it is possible to pair an external keyboard to the Apple TV directly, but to me, there's no reason to when you can use continuity keyboard like that. You can also use continuity keyboard for passwords, so you don't have to necessarily type anything at all. If you're signing into Hulu and here's the way I would do it. Let me just give you the workflow. This is the way I would do it. If I'm signing into, let's just say Hulu, for example, it's going to pop up and it's going to say, enter the email address you use to sign into Hulu. Well, first of all, most often you're going to have a row of recently used email addresses on your Apple TV. And if one of those happens to be the Hulu email address that you use, or now it's the Disney email address, I guess would be more appropriate, you just click it and it inserts that whole email address, and typically automatically brings you then to the password field, or else maybe you have to go down and hit done, and then it continues to the password field. But either way, you've saved yourself a whole bunch of steps by choosing a recently used email address. So that's the first thing I would do. Then I would be in the password field. Now here I would pick up my iPhone or my iPad. I would choose the notification that says Apple TV keyboard, and then on my on-screen keyboard on the phone or the iPad, now not on the Apple TV, but on the phone or the iPad, is going to be a typical keychain icon just above the letters U, I, and O, just like it is normally on your iPhone or iPad. It'll say passwords button, or it'll say autofill password, something like that. So I double tap on that. I authenticate with Face ID or Touch ID if you have an older device or different device that uses that. All of mine are Face ID now, praise God. But I would authenticate with Face ID. I'd choose my password, and as soon as I double tap on that password, it's going to insert that password on the TV, and I just have to go down on the Apple TV remote to the continue or done or next or finish or sign in or log in or whatever it's called, right? But in other words, that is going to save me a number of steps, and that's how I would do it if it's possible, which it usually is. Now, in some rare cases, maybe, something doesn't work there. Maybe if you're not getting notifications for continuity keyboard, I'd go into settings and then notifications, and I would find the list of apps and make sure that Apple TV continuity keyboard is turned on. But if you're in a situation where you do need to use the on-screen keyboard, the other thing you can do is dictate. So as long as you have focus on the on-screen keyboard on the Apple TV, you can press the side button of your remote and hold it down. And that, remember, normally brings up SIRI, but here it's going to bring up dictation. The thing you're going to want to do with email addresses and passwords is spell everything letter by letter. So, if my email address is Cliff at stiritup.com, I would say KLIPH at STURI, just like that. And it will insert each of those letters, and VoiceOver will read them back. So try not to be too close to your speakers, because if your microphone on your remote hears VoiceOver, it's going to insert double letters, and all of a sudden you've got KKLLII. Well, obviously you don't want that, so just not too close. You'd have to be pretty close for it to pick up on that, but I have had it happen on rare occasions if the volume was louder or whatever, so just be aware of that. So you're going to spell things, and if you need to say capital, you just say capital, right? Capital L A. I don't know what word I'm spelling, but anyhow, you just say the capital when it's necessary. So the other thing that the on-screen keyboard will sometimes have is some shortcuts for things like .com, .edu, .org. It'll sometimes have those, so you can play with that as well if you do have to type. And probably the very first time you ever have to enter an email address, you're better off just entering it, because then it will go into the recently used section. And if you change email addresses, you can always clear the recently used from settings as well, or delete ones from it anyhow. Okay, so the other thing then that I'd like to talk briefly about is just to sort of expand a little upon, and some of this we will save for Wednesday at 7 Eastern, but just expand a little upon the um, the additional apps that Apple provides. Again, I'm not going to get into per se how to navigate them in a step-by-step kind of fashion, but I want you to be encouraged that they are accessible and you can explore them at your convenience. And so the first one is the Music app. Now, the Music app works with any purchased music, and it also works with the iCloud library. And remember, there are two ways you can have an iCloud library. One is through a subscription to iTunes Match. The other is through a subscription to Apple Music. And if you have Apple Music, you can really play anything, anytime. But it does sync your playlists and everything, so you have access to all of your playlists that you've made on another device. And you can easily access those on TV, and all of your content from iCloud, anything you've purchased, anything that's available on Apple Music if you're a subscriber. So all of that is available in the Apple Music app. Music will continue playing if you leave the app, but you can pause it with the play pause button. And I also would remind you that if you're an Apple Music subscriber, you have access to the full Apple Music radio and that whole catalog, both the live and the on-demand radio stations, and even some radio stations through TuneIn and iHeart and things of that nature, right in the Music app. You also have time-synced lyrics. And of course, with VoiceOver, yeah, it's doable, but again, it might sound a little weird. You may not want to do that, but it's great for having, friends over. We've done it at like New Year's Eve parties and things of that nature, where we'll have friends over and we'll do a little karaoke. And so, you pull up a song that everybody wants to sing, and it will display the lyrics on the screen. But not only will it display the lyrics, it displays them in time where you are supposed to sing them. And it also allows you in many songs, not all, but in many songs in Apple Music, if you subscribe to that, it allows you to control the vocal volume. So you can turn down the vocal volume to almost nothing, and then you can sing over top of that with time-synced lyrics. And so that is a really fun thing to do. That's available on your iPad and iPhone as well. Maybe your Mac, I don't know, because I don't really use the Music app on the Mac very much, but I know it's available on the iPad and iPhone. But I think it's the best scenario is definitely doing it on the Apple TV, because it's a great thing for families and groups and stuff like that. So it just makes sense, right, to do that on the big screen so everybody can see the lyrics, and you turn down the vocal volume, and you're good to go. So that's the Music app. If you use different apps for music, like for example Pandora, Sirius XM, they are available for the Apple TV, and I'm sure I know there are others as well. But you can actually use your sign into your Sirius XM account on there and so forth as well. Photos is another app that ships with your Apple TV. And again, this is going to work best if you use iCloud Photos, because then you will have access to all of your photos and videos right on the Apple TV. You can also watch memories and create slideshows and everything. And the first time you open Photos on the Apple TV, it's going to ask you, do you want to use iCloud Photos? And you can enable that. And it's really the best way to go, as long as you also have iCloud Photos available, or enabled rather, on all of your other devices. Then it's going to be super easy to access everything. And again, this is per user. So if you switch user accounts, right? So, if nowadays this isn't even so much an issue because they now have the shared library where people can put photos that pertain to the whole family and stuff. So you may not even need to be concerned about this. But if someone in the family has different photos on his or her phone and you want to see those, you just switch to their user account. And it's that easy to access other members of the family and their photos and so on as well. Now, in order to set that up, they have to the first time go to settings on the Apple TV, and you have to add each user that you want. But once that's done, it's super easy to switch from the control center to whichever user you want. I already mentioned to you about the Apple Fitness app, which works great with the Apple Watch. So you can be doing exercises and workouts, and they'll have a video workout on the Apple TV with a trainer and everything and music of your choosing. And then your watch is actually keeping track of it and syncing that data, communicating back and forth. Again, the way that Apple integrates these things is just incredible. And we have podcasts, and you can ask SIRI to play music or to play a podcast or to play, even a movie or TV show for that matter. And just remember to hold down the side button. Now, if you have a HomePod, you can even do a lot of this without holding down the side button because you can use SIRI on the HomePod to do much of the same thing. So, for example, you could like one of the things that we've sometimes done is we like I said, maybe you go to the kitchen to get a drink or a snack, and maybe we decide, oh, we want to make this snack, but we have to cook this, so it's going to take a little bit longer. Well, rather than run back into the living room to hit the pause button, I'll just say SIRI. I'll say pause the living room television, and she will, and it just it just works with the HomePods like that. So there's a lot of continuity, syncing, integration of all of these apps, which is just so awesome. And we're going to talk on Wednesday a little bit more about HomeKit devices because the Apple TV works great as a home hub. And what that means is you can use HomeKit devices throughout your home and even access them remotely and run automations and so forth. And all of this is done much better when you have a home hub. And the Apple TV serves as a home hub. And you don't have to manually set it up as that. It's set up by default. And what's nice is that you can even have if you have multiple Apple TVs and HomePods throughout your home, you're just increasing the efficiency and the range of your home devices because they act as like a mesh network of home hubs automatically. Whichever one is needed is used at the time. And I think in tvOS 18, I heard that you can choose which home hub is used. And the only time that would really matter is if you have a device that doesn't necessarily have Wi-Fi in it, but only has Bluetooth. For example, some door locks are that way. A lot of manufacturers don't use Wi-Fi in their door locks, or even if they do, it's only for like product updates and stuff. It's not for range because I guess that really eats into the battery life a lot of a door lock. And so a lot of them are using Bluetooth. Now, some of them are also using Thread and things like that will help to boost their range too. But if you have a Bluetooth door lock, it's going to have to be fairly close to a home hub in order for it to work properly, even when you're away from home, and for you not to experience any delays. And so consequently, maybe I have 4 home hubs, but the closest one happens to be a HomePod Mini that's almost right beside my front door. Well, I'm going to want to designate that as the default home hub then, because I don't want my door lock to ever be slow to respond. I want it to, lock the front door and it does it right away. So, just be aware of that kind of thing. And again, this is all stuff that we are able to help you with free consults and then our paid shopping assistance. Or if you are a Premier or a Gold member, you've already got it. It's included. So we can help you with that stuff. And what are we helping you with? We're helping you to know what kinds of things you need and what makes sense and placement and all that stuff, right? So we know if we're getting into door locks or something, that we need to have them very close to the home hub. Now, something like a thermostat probably doesn't matter because it's probably going to communicate with the home hub over Wi-Fi. And so as long as you have good Wi-Fi, you're not going to have a problem. But, again, these are all things to just be aware of depending on the kind of device that you have. But it's good to know that the Apple TV will indeed serve as a home hub, does indeed serve as a home hub, and you can have multiple hubs throughout your house.
I don't tend to like the clicking of the side buttons. I like to pause and swipe because you get faster results. So, unless you're going for 10 or 15 seconds, then it's fine. But if you're
right.
going to jump like an hour ahead or 45 minutes of swiping, the pause and swipe works better.
Well, because here's one of those cases where it's exactly a personal preference thing. For me, if I'm going to go that big of a chunk, like 45 minutes, I would probably use SIRI. But since you use that pause and swipe, would you mind describing? I told the people about it, but I don't use it regularly. So can you give them a little bit more insight into that one?
It's touchy though, because you have to be careful because you could swipe too much and go 3 hours if anything's even that long or to the end. So it's more you have to it's very touchy. It's a trial and error thing. So what I do is I pause it and say I want to go ahead a half an hour. I swipe just a little bit, let's say a quarter of an inch, and that'll take me that far ahead. I'll count to five and then play it again and see where I'm at. But essentially, it's going to be the sensitive touch of how much you actually swipe. You don't want to swipe, all the way from one click from left to right, from one clicking button to the other, because then you're going to jump ahead. It's short it's short swipes. You don't want to swipe like you're doing on your iPhone. You want to swipe as if you're flicking a crumb off a screen or something. So it's a real short scrub, or not scrub, but short swipe to get to where you want to go. And I would recommend, like I said, counting to two, three or four, and then pause or playing to see where you're at. But that's where it's at. But I mean, once you practice it a few times, you'll get it, and rewind in the same ways. So you pause, swipe just a bit to the left, and count to three or four, play it to see where you're at. So, but again, if I was doing it, like if I was only going 10 or 20 seconds, I would do it the way you do it. But if I'm jumping that much ahead, I've had mixed results with Siri on different platforms, and I was tired of guessing, so I just learned how to do the pause and swipe thing, which, by the way, you are the one who actually told me about. So
yeah, that's funny. Press play, pause, swipe left or right on the clickpad or touch surface to scrub backward or forward through the video or song. That's exactly what Cliff and I said. Then it says, do either of the following: start playback at the new position, press the play/pause button. Cancel and return to the original position, press the back button, or the menu button. That's just depending on which remote you have. So I was wrong about the button. It's not the center button. If you want to go,
it's the back button.
It's the
okay.
back, which makes a lot more sense. Actually, that really makes sense.
Are we talking about the left button, or is it actually the back button on the in the collection of 5 buttons?
It would be in the collection, the top left button there. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
On older remotes,
now, and
that's
the other
called
thing I want to
menu.
ask you, because maybe it says it there, but I want to ask you, because you're talking about if you click left or right, it'll go 10 seconds. If you hold it, will it continue to go or not?
Depends on the app.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about an Apple app then. In Apple TV Plus, if you hold the forward button or the back button, will it rewind, or do you have to continually click the left or right arrows?
Let's see what it says here, because I haven't. It's okay. It says during playback, use your remote to do any of the following: skip backward or forward 10 seconds, press left or right on the click pad. And they're saying 10. Yeah, okay. They're only saying 10 seconds. I had thought forward went 30, but it's saying only 10. Okay. Continuously rewind or fast forward, press and hold left or right on the click pad ring. And it says, let's see, press repeatedly. Oh, that's interesting. Press repeatedly to cycle through fast forward or rewind options 2x, 3x, or 4x, and then to resume playback, press the
That
play button.
makes
And thanks to everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks to Cliff for your help. God bless you, everybody. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining today's session. Didn't get your question answered? Have an additional comment or feedback? Email us info@ttjtech.biz or info@stirritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com. Or check out our websites for additional resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stirritup.com. And remember, subscribe to the newsletter when you're there. That way, you don't miss out on any upcoming announcements or events. Thanks for joining us. God bless, and see you next time.